Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, I will be covering every form of public transport in Melbourne, ranging from more well-known ones like trains, trams, and buses, to some you might not even know existed. For the more well-known forms of transport, I'll just be doing a brief summary, while for everything else, I'll go into more detail. So without further ado, let's get started. First, we have trains. The Melbourne railway network is fully electrified and is the largest in Australia and has over 400 kilometres of track with 14 lines. It's one of the largest entirely radial networks in the world, with lines only converging in the city. Today, most lines have 20-minute frequencies on the weekend and off-peak, with higher frequencies in peak periods. Frequency is set to increase after the metro tunnel opens later this year. The Melbourne Tram network is the largest in the world, at 250 kilometres, and carries nearly as many people as the trains every day. There are 24 permanent routes, with 75% of the network being shared with car traffic. Trams mostly cover the inner city, although some routes do venture out further into the outer suburbs. Frequencies on the tram network are usually about 10 minutes. However, this is shorter on sections of shared track. Notably, Swanston Street in the city is the busiest tram corridor in the world by number of trams, and you can frequently see 2 or 3 trams pulling up to the platform at once. Next, we have buses. Unlike the tram and train networks, buses are severely lacking, with frequencies of only 1 or 2 buses per hour. There are few, and I mean very few, 10 and 15-minute frequency routes, but they're the exception rather than the norm. Many buses have these incredibly winding and convoluted routes that are difficult to understand for many people, and the network in general is nowhere near as good as Sydney or Brisbane. Next, we have V-Line trains. These are usually reserved for long distance trips to elsewhere in the state, but there are a few V-Line routes that include stations in the suburbs, more specifically to Melton and Wyndham Vale, where V-Line runs commuter services in peak periods to get people from these areas into the city. There are plans for these lines to be electrified in the future, but so far nothing has happened. Usually, when a V-Line train makes a stop at a suburban station, passengers are only allowed to board if they are travelling beyond the city. This is not the case, however, at Sunbury and Pakenham. This means a trip from, say, Pakenham to Dandenong is a completely valid trip you can make entirely by V-Line train, despite electric suburban trains also using this section of track and stopping at these stations. Don't expect a pleasant trip if you do this, however, as by the time V-Line trains reach the outskirts, they're generally very busy. After trains, there's coaches. Unfortunately, unlike V-Line trains, there's no possible journeys you can make by coach within Melbourne, as most suburban coach stops are set down only, even in very distant semi-rural suburbs like Whittlesea. Therefore, it is usually not possible to take a coach as public transport in Melbourne. The only case where it's possible is where coaches are replacing trains on V-Line routes due to works or disruptions. Whether this counts, however, is debatable as these are not regular timetabled services. Melbourne is not exactly known for outstanding ferry transport, unlike another Australian city you may have heard of. There are a few ferry services to locations around Port Phillip Bay, such as Geelong and Port Arlington, but these are more regional services, as Geelong is another city and Port Arlington is a country town. Despite this, however, there is one, just one suburban ferry service, known as the Westgate Punt. This is a little-known ferry that provides a pedestrian alternative to the Westgate Bridge, connecting from Spotswood to Westgate Landing in Port Melbourne. It also provides a connection between major bike paths in this area. Because of this, most passengers on this ferry are cyclists, bringing their bikes with them. It's surprisingly busy given how dead and empty the places it connects feel, especially during weekends. On weekdays, it has a fixed timetable, with scheduled departures in the morning and afternoon. However, on weekends, the ferry has no timetable, simply heading back and forth to pick up any passengers that are waiting. The ticket price is $3 on weekdays and $5 on weekends, and is not integrated with Mikey. Payments are strictly card only, with passengers picked up in a small red ferry with the PTV logo on it. The ride is short, but very enjoyable, and I would highly recommend it to anyone interested in this kind of stuff. The next form of public transport is the Skybus. Skybus is a privately owned business that operates bus routes to and from Melbourne and Avalon Airport, with double-decker buses, most notably to the bus interchange at Southern Cross. While this is also used for regional coaches, the majority of passengers visiting this area are heading on a Skybus bound for the airport. Skybus is operated by a private company and is not subsidized by the government. Therefore, they do not use Mikey and instead have their own incredibly expensive ticketing system that costs $20 per one-way trip, 4 times as much as it would if you could use your Mikey. You can buy them using these self-kiosks in the station. Apart from their main Melbourne airport to city route, they also run an airport to Frankston route, with some buses continuing on to Mornington, as well as Avalon Airport to the city. There used to be more routes, but these were suspended during COVID and have yet to recommence. Due to the insanely high prices and lack of bus lanes on the Tullamarine Freeway, leading to buses getting stuck in traffic, only 8% of those arriving at Melbourne Airport use the Skybus, and this will likely get even lower if the airport rail link is finally constructed. Finally, we have FlexiRide. FlexiRide is the newest form of transport in Melbourne, only being inaugurated in 2021 and only available in a few select areas of Melbourne's outer suburbs. To use it, you need to download the app. Essentially, it means you get your own private bus that can take you anywhere you want in this very limited area, but only if you are heading to or from one of a few major hotspots. Overall, it's pretty much taxis but worse. When I first tried to book my ride online, my bus was cancelled with no explanation aside from a text message telling me to try booking it again. After attempting to book it again, I got denied again, and then got a call from someone from PTV telling me that I couldn't book this route because there was already a bus that went this way. Specifically, the 675, which only runs once an hour. This is apparently some kind of unspoken rule that isn't listed anywhere on the PTV website or FlexiRide app. Nevertheless, I eventually did manage to secure myself a ride to a different location. As I was departing from Muralbark Station, there were many buses coming and going, so I didn't have to wait long. On the way back, however, I ended up having to wait nearly 40 minutes, as the bus kept heading to different locations to pick up other passengers. This is really bad, and it means it can't really be used as a viable turn up and go transport option. This could maybe have been avoided if I had booked my ride in advance, but even then, you sometimes aren't able to get the time slot you need, and I imagine this would be even worse during peak periods. So overall, FlexiRide is just a taxi, but with an incredibly limited range, the inability to take you places regular buses already go, very inconsistent wait times, and general unreliability. The only saving grace is that it's cheap, only costing the price of a Mikey fare. Still, it's not reliable or useful enough for the residents of the area, and for most of them, driving is just a better option. And that was every type of public transport in Melbourne currently operating as of 2024. Thanks for watching this video, and huge thanks to my channel members for supporting the creation of videos like this. I'll see you guys in the next one.